Hey, everybody. Hope you all are doing well on this Wednesday evening. Welcome, of course, to Midnight Hatter Live, the weekly variety show where we talk Gundam gaming and Gunpla. I'm your host, Stephen Bayless, aka Midnight Hatter. I'm flying solo tonight. Yeah, Adam had some prior engagements, so we're just going to be doing some fun stuff. It's funny because Adam always tends to miss these particular shows where we're doing these types of hobby activities, but that's what this channel was founded on, and we're going to get back to that. Rest assured, we are going to be doing some fun stuff here in the coming months. And to get it started, it is a new month. It is the month of February. It's Love Heart Month for those of you guys that have a near and dear sweetheart. Hope you guys have your Valentine's Day um, plans all in order. But yeah, as usual for the start of the month, this past weekend, I dropped it was a quick, I don't want to say it was thrown together, but I have been working on my personal mech 3D models, and then especially ahead of all of the Gundam Assemble announcements, with that stuff coming out in March, I'm gonna be like obviously getting back into more Gundam miniature stuff. But I got bogged down with work and with the snowstorm and all this other stuff. So anyway, all the excuses aside, what I ended up dropping for the Patreon perk for this month is the Temray learning computer circuit. And what we're going to do, let me go ahead and hop into our little screen share so I can show you guys. This is the model here in Blender. And again, I don't want to say thrown together because it's definitely not that. Obviously, I did some materials editing here and kind of sculpted it. It's it was just an easy model to put together. There's not a lot of articulated parts. There's not a lot of you know, finer details. It's really just like a blocky piece. Actually, you know what? I did something earlier here and it looks like I might have messed it up. I think what I need to do is because you guys know how I like to do things in non-destructive ways, and so I like to use modifiers when and where possible. I think that I had my subdivision surface modifier caught that angle, and let me fix that. Yeah, there we go. That's what we want it to look like, is nice and flush. So yeah, this is our Temray circuit. It's basically a box, but right now it's just kind of a prop. It doesn't do anything. It's not cool. And I've seen some interesting builds online for this particular model, and it's a long time coming for me because, like I said, it's kind of like a what do you call it? It's like a starter project almost, to make something that you 3D print that's just like a box kind of. Um, but there's a lot of cool things that can be done with it. I saw one person made like a functional Temray circuit. Basically, it's got a microcontroller in it and it just has some flashing lights on it. It's just a prop. It's not really it doesn't do anything cool. And then even the official Temray circuit that they sell in Japan is just a USB hub. So it's like that's not really creative. Um, so yeah, I wanted to make this something that like we can put some technology in, make some kind of housing for a device, whether it's a microcontroller like this, the little ESP32, or maybe something a little bit more powerful like a Raspberry Pi. Um, I wanted to make some kind of enclosure that we could use to do something fun with. And I think tonight's project is going to be a little quick and dirty, but it will actually work out for us. But before we hop into it, I do want to touch on some, you guys, obviously, I love doing the G Generation Eternal load screen, waiting screen before the show starts. I still need to add some of my other units that I've unlocked the loading screens for, like the full armor double Zeta and some of the other ones. But they just launched this new event, the Eternal Tower West. So they've done a couple of Generation Tower Easts, and those were pretty difficult. Like they almost were more like puzzles. which was cool because obviously, uh, when you're playing a turn-based tactics game like a G Generation title, um, it really does come down to things like positioning and what advantages there are on the map and things like that. But G Generation, the Generation Tower West, the one that's currently live right now, is far and away way, way, way easier than Generation Tower East. I think that East relied on you having units that have particular abilities. So, for instance, there was a level in Generation Tower East where you had to get one unit into like the end zone. It was, which I mean, it's a cool, like, it's almost like a little football game. But the only way to do that is if you had the Master Gundam maxed out because the only way to do it was to use his special map attack ability to like skip ahead. Um, and that's no fun where it's like limited to units. What they've done here with Generation Tower West is it doesn't necessarily matter the specific units you have. Everything is contained in the map. So, like, I think the most difficult one that I've come across so far has been uh, there's a level where you are you have to intercept the Gundam Vidar, and it's coming towards Gundam Bale. Gundam Bale can't move, it's fixed in place, but the thing that makes it really difficult is obviously Gundam Vidar is, like, super, it's not just a typical Gundam Vidar, it's, like, souped up, and then there are areas on the map that it's like there's two little tiny areas that boost your attack, but then there's massive areas that completely like nuke your defense. And so it makes it really, really hard to get in and actually fight the Gundam Vidar and do damage to him. And so what you end up having to do is time it out and make sure that your units are in position along the lower half of the map as he's coming down towards Gundam Bale, because the idea is you have to protect Gundam Bale from Gundam Vidar, and then like you kind of pounce on him right at the end. Um, but again, that was like the most difficult level, and even that one, my Zeta just kind of tore through it. Honestly, I've been using Zeta, like abusing Zeta almost for this Generation Tower West, because if you have a unit that does like significant damage like that, it's gonna help you just kind of mop everything up. Um, but yeah, like I said, a little bit of G Generation Eternal talk. Other than that, there's not really a whole lot of exciting stuff going on, unless, of course, you are living in Japan and you can see Gundam Hathaway already. Um, but in the meantime, we just have to wait for it to drop over here in the States, and hopefully it's good. I mean, I've been hearing good things. Like the rumblings on Twitter say that it's much better than the trailers lead on. So I will, you know, I'll keep my hopes up for it. So that said, eventually I can do a lot of different things with this particular build here with the Gundam computer, but I thought it would be fun to do something a little bit less involved. Like obviously, we can build something that's got like little components in it. And it's like, ooh, like maybe we put a little LCD screen in it, and then we can like have a little, SD card reader, and we can have like some kind of cool. I mean, honestly, I think that the size of this, like being about this big, like it's big enough that you could put a Raspberry Pi 5 and run a local LLM, and like, it's supposed to be the AI computer of the Gundam, right? So like you could in fact make it an AI itself if you wanted to. um, Actually, I saw somebody do that with a BMO, like, from Adventure Time. They, like, had, like, a locally hosted LLM, and, like, it had voice activation features, and then you could actually use it as a retro game emulator. So, that would be cool to do, honestly, like, if I put, like, a big old screen on the back. I even had an idea where, like, what if I had, Gundam Assemble style figures, something like this, and they had NFC chips in them, and obviously, it's not gonna read a full game from the NFC chip, but you could use the NFC chip as your, cartridge, so to speak. It's almost like what Nintendo's doing with these, like, the, like, game key carts where it's like, "Oh, the game isn't on the card. It's just a card that you put in your Switch that allows you to download the game." So the games would already be loaded onto it, but you would just use the NFC chips in the Gundams to actually, like, load them while you're playing. I thought that that was kind of a neat idea. It's a little goofy, but, I mean, let me know if you guys wanna see something like that because I think it'd be fun, like, especially pulling up games like Lost War Chronicles, and we'd use like a ground type Gundam to unlock that one or something like that. I don't know. There's all kind of different applications, but we're gonna be doing a boring one tonight, mostly because it's gonna be easy, quick and dirty. I think we'll be able to knock it out fairly easily, to be honest with you. So this here, you guys might recognize, is the humble Game Boy Advance SP. I've had this one. I'll be honest with you. I think I stole it from my little brother years and years ago. So if you're in chat, buddy, let me know, and I will. I apologize. I'm about to tear this apart. I can guarantee you, however, that this was his because I did not have Pokemon Fire Red. I had Sapphire. Was the only Game Boy Advance Pokemon that I played. So yeah, that's definitely his copy. I did, however, play through it, unlock Mewtwo, so I could push Mewtwo to my copy of Sapphire, push Mewtwo through to Pokemon Black, and then Pokemon XY. So, obviously, I wanted to get all my favorites from Fire Red and push them through to the newer titles. But one of the reasons that I picked this is, well, A, I had it sitting around in the garage, but B, there's actually a very rich modding community when it comes to the Game Boy Advance SP. In fact, now I'm not Zach Builds, so I'm not going to be doing any of the crazy modding like swapping out the power supply with. Although I could, I mean, theoretically, I do have a USB-C power supply here. Stay tuned for that. Maybe we are going to upgrade this and like actually mod it and make it something cool. For now, um, one of the most popular mods for the Game Boy Advance SP is basically converting it into a hingeless design. So something more like a Game Boy Color. And so there's a lot of free STLs that have that build. And so we're going to be kind of borrowing that design and incorporating it into the Temray circuit in order to create the Temray Game Boy. I think this is going to be pretty cool. Um, so So as you can see, like this is the circuit, and then as always, you guys know me, I like to do everything kind of non-destructively. So I'm going to make a copy of this model, Shift D, enter to set to paste it, and then I've already imported. This is one of said conversions. Oh, that's kind of eerie. There's like some creaking going on in my house. It's spooking me out. So this is one of said flat panel conversions for our Game Boy SP. This is from the Open SP on Thingiverse. I put a link down in the description to it if you guys want to see it. There are some things that I like about this design and some things that I don't, and there's some things that we're going to have to change in order to make it work for our Temray circuit. So the way that this particular design works is it actually doesn't replace the entire shell of it. It only replaces the front. Because what you see here is the screen, you have to tuck up behind this little flat panel, and then the back side of the Game Boy SP, you actually retain this back part and use it as your back plate. And one of the complicating factors about this is the shoulder buttons. So if we do want to keep shoulder button functionality, then this is kind of a must in the design. However, that's not going to work with our circuit, right? Because how are we going to, we don't want to have a whole chunk of the backside of the circuit missing. Um, and not to mention, I think it would make more sense if this were, let's rotate it on the z-axis 180. I think it would make more sense if this were on the backside, because the backside obviously doesn't have anything on it, right? So it would make more sense to have the backside be the game, and then this is just kind of cosmetic. So there's that. Now the volume slider is going to be on the side, and so is the power switch. So I don't think that that's going to interfere with anything on our Temray circuit. We're just gonna have to crack this guy open and see exactly we are going to, um, how we're gonna do it in order to make this work. So for that, we are going to use our little handy dandy screwdriver kit, and um, I bought this because I was repairing my MacBook, and like I don't know who uses more proprietary screws, Nintendo or Apple, because both of them use like these tri-tip and like 5-tip screws in their screwdrivers. So the Nintendo one relies on this little tri-tip guy. Um, and that's common even in like the Switch. So like I swapped out the SD card reader on my Switch fairly recently, and yeah. Oh, and shout out to the chat. Good to see you guys in here. Ultronymous, Kusanagi, Dan Vince. Good to see you guys. Ultronymous says that maybe some of those holes on the side could be speaker holes. Maybe, but I'm thinking probably not, because this thing is all on one board. Or, well, technically two if you count the screen being its own board. But I'm fairly sure that unless I desolder things and move them around, I don't think that we're gonna be able to really alter the mechanics of it. So this is that back plate that I was telling you guys about. Oh, interesting. Oh, no, okay, so these are the little spring hinges for the buttons. Our little on-off switch is just a little plastic switch that sits in the tray here, and then we actually the volume slider switch. Okay, that one is actually fixed to the board. But yeah, here it is. This is your Nintendo Game Boy Advance SP motherboard here. I don't want to pry it off, as you know, out of fear of really damaging it. So let's see what we've got here as far as disassembly. I'm not even sure where the wire for the screen kind of goes in. So let's get underneath here, sort of tease it out a little bit. I don't see. Oh, okay, okay. So I think that it is screwed to the bottom here. There's like these three little screws that I think are holding it in place. Naturally, they are a different screwdriver, so um, it's one of the nice things about this guy coming with multiple screwdrivers is it's not just a single screwdriver with a lot of different heads. It's actually two screwdrivers with a lot of different heads. So let's grab one of these Phillips and see what we can see. And again, like a lot of this stuff has already been accounted for in the model that we've downloaded and dropped into Blender here. However, we want to make sure. Oh, and by the way, before I even started the stream, I took the battery out just like so that I don't fry it. You know, obvious safety precautions. Um, but yeah, you definitely want no game cartridge in here and no battery when you start tearing it apart. Otherwise, you oh, and like no static electricity, which hopefully I'm not generating too much static here in front of the old computer. Oh, I see there's actually the battery backup. Or no, no, I don't think that's a battery backup. I think that's actually the speaker. All right, let's see what we've got here. All right. Well, hey, look at that. So, you'll be excited to know this, Ultronymous, is that the speaker is not even connected to the PCB. It is a free floating speaker that has little pogo pins that press up against this connector. So we could, in theory, just like run wires to it and do that. That is a pretty cool discovery. Again, I've never taken one of these apart before, so my experience with modding this guy is uh, limited. So I see where the ribbon cable is that runs up to the screen, but like I don't. Ooh, 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 there go my buttons. So actually, let's see here. Oh, oh, oh. All right, that's okay. We'll round them up in the morning. uh, so it looks like there is a little spot here where we can take the ribbon cable that connects the screen out, but I want to be very delicate with that because obviously, you know, ribbon cables are notoriously fragile. Bum, bum, bum. Let's just get these buttons out of here. Oh, that's just like the membrane for the button. It's not even like a. And this doesn't even appear to be like one of those little flip tabs. Interesting. So it does sort of limit what we can do. The fact that it's all on one board like this. But it's good to know. But yeah, so the speaker can in fact be repositioned. So we won't need the speaker holes on the front, theoretically speaking. It looks like we will need to scale up the size of it to account for the screen size, to account for, just the overall width of the board. So let's do that here. So let's maybe scale. I think right about here looks good. And then it depends on like how lore accurate we want the circuit to be. Like, do we want it to be a little bit taller than the Game Boy is supposed to be just for the sake of, of doing it that way? Or do we want to scale it down so that it fits the Game Boy dimensions a little bit better? I'm kind of inclined towards scaling it down, especially because we're going to have to scale it this way anyway, because it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of big and goofy. So yeah, let's do it this way. We're going to hop in and we're just going to grab some faces down here. Actually, come to think of it, you know what we should do? So we're going to grab all of these. It's a good thing that I did these in blocks. Oh, not that. And we're going to grab the bottom here. And I kind of beveled it. So I'm like, I have to grab these little corner pieces too. Like right there. And so then when we scale it up to be in line with the Game Boy size. Should be like right there. Looks like I need to grab the base here as well. I think that should be good enough if I grab just the base like that. And then we're going to pull it up again. Nope. Nope, I need to grab the front. Grab these. Grab that. I think that should be enough this time. Let's try one more time. Third time's a charm. Perfection. So now obviously I'm going to have to like kind of scale things back down inside the box in order to make them fit properly, but I think that that's okay. So like if I do this and then we say scale on just the Z. The problem is I don't want to mess up my buttons on there. So maybe what we'll do is we will yeah, we're gonna have to do like a whole bunch of special arranging on this, and like, because basically what I'm gonna try and do is scale down, well, not scale down, but like bring the top of this down just a hair. And so instead of scaling the entire shape, all I'm going to be doing is shrinking this like little band in the middle, but the buttons will retain their size and orientation and everything. So again, we want to make sure that we grab the little beveled edges. Oh. Hey, smart me. I did not bevel the inside of it. That was some clever forethought on my part. Either that or I couldn't reach them. And so I was like, guess I'm not going to bevel them. Oh, darn it. I actually need to grab all these first so that I can do my little grab all trick. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to come in and grab all this. Sorry, I know this is the most exciting stuff, is just moving and scaling, but if it doesn't fit, then we're not going to have a very good time playing our new Game Boy. And one of the things that I did with my design that I've noticed has not been done on like some of the other versions of the Temray circuit is I created that like illusion of depth, because most of the designs that I've seen, they have all of the wires just kind of like loose inside there. But I wanted to optimize this to be printed in one piece. So like, so in theory, if you were to print this just on its back, it would print like solid, no problem, because all of the wires are overlapping and kind of create this illusion of depth. So the wall in here is actually halfway through the wires, so that, you know, so that they're all kind of touching, because the actual circuit, I think, is kind of like empty in there, but and it's black on the inside because in the anime that was how they kind of created that illusion of depth. But so here we go. Perfection. So now it looks the way it's supposed to look, but it's the size of the Game Boy that we need it to be. Now, of course, we are going to have to squash it too. So this part I think is going to be a little bit trickier because of the circles on the side here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the circles. But then we need to deselect all of the faces on the outside of the device. And what this is going to do for us is it's going to allow us to basically move the circles along the face of the side of the plane here. Does that make, am I making any sense? So let me show you what I mean, is we're going to be able to move the circles left and right. But without, damaging, because we want to retain that perfect circular shape. We don't want it to, like get squashed and get non-proportional. Just want to make sure that we selected all of it. And honestly, this is going to end up being like the most convoluted, complex part of this process. And you're going to see why here in just a second, because once I'm like basically map the face of this onto the back of our Temray circuit, it's just going to be a matter of like finding where to fit stuff, for lack of a better word. Um, the thing that I'm most concerned about, and I mentioned this earlier, are the shoulder buttons, because if we don't find a way to make the shoulder buttons work, then we may be a little SOL. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So, oh, you know what? I wonder if we can Shift X. Look at that. What if we scale our circles down? Scale our circles down just a hair. We'll say like maybe by 25%. We're going to reduce the size here. We're going to bring them back up because I think that they're more they're not exactly aligned with the dots here in the reference images that I used. They're a little bit below. So what I tried to do was kind of line up the bottom of the red and blue dots with the center of these circles, which I don't even know what these circles are supposed to represent in the anime, but you know, that's Temray for you. He's a crazy person. So we want to squash this down a little bit. And honestly, you know what we ought to do? Let's select everything. And for ease of use, if I go clean up and let's do a limited dissolve, look how much that cleans up the geometry. This isn't going to work in the long haul, like, because it creates so many n-gons, but it is helpful in this particular case so that we can, do what we need to do. So like this. Yeah, what the heck? So like this n-gon needs to be pulled out a little bit. We had some like overlapping faces in there that were looking kind of weird, so I think what I need to do is make sure that I don't have that selected, but we do want to pull this out. Perfect. And we probably are going to have to do it on this side too, because if the sides are mirrored, then surely the same issue exists. No, I don't see any overlapping faces on this side, so this side is a lot cleaner. Now we can grab this whole panel here, and we're going to grab this and grab this. Grab our little corners here. Not that one. And we're just going to squash this whole thing and make it small. Now, don't worry for now about the about all the internal components. We're going to shrink that stuff down to fit it back inside later. But That this is starting to look more like the one from G-Quux instead of the one that's in Gundam. Like, because the one in G-Quux is, like, much smaller. It almost looks more like a cartridge than, like, a circuit or what have you. Um, so, yeah, we can take these. We're gonna just pop them inside, and they still overlap with the Heidi device that I put in there. And what we can actually do is we can create more space for the internals if we grab all of these wires and pipes and stuff. Um, and we are going to bring them forward about as much as we can. Obviously, we don't want it to start clipping through that plane. But by bringing that forward, then we can bring this forward, which gives us more. Oh, you know what? There's a mathematical way to do this that I should be employing. So on the y plane, it's negative 4.0277. So what we're going to do is we're just going to grab that y value and apply it here, which should put our black plane right along the middle of our wires. Ooh, but see, we do have an issue here with the backside of those poking through. But honestly, I'm not too worried about it because since this side is something that people aren't going to see, I'm kind of like, you know, screw it. I'm not worried about this side being perfectly round and circular because it's hidden inside the shell. Because ultimately, that's what we're creating. We're creating a hollow box. Um, right now, it's got all of these shapes in it because that's just easier to work with. But what we're going to do really um, before we really settle on this is uh, we're going to just make this a hollow box using like a remesh. Make sure that our just make sure that everything is all in one piece. And I think there's a couple different ways we could do that. We can either remesh it, which programmatically it's easier, but mathematically sometimes it gets a little sloppy and it can cost us detail. What I think might be a more interesting way of doing it would be to create a plane, and then what we're going to do is just use the shrink wrap modifier to like kind of suction cup it onto our shape here. So this, to me, looks a little bit more like a Game Boy. What do you guys think? And it's probably gonna be the most uncomfortable Game Boy to use because, like, obviously it's got this like weird texture and stuff on the back. Um, oh well. I think it's the gimmick of it is cooler than it's cooler than all that. Oh, see, so this is what I was talking about by doing that limited dissolve is it breaks the geometry of our shape. So what we need to do is we need to come back in here and we are going to go face, triangulate faces, and tries to quads. And now when we hop out, it should be mostly back to normal, but it looks like there's still some stuff that's a little goofy. I think that a lot of the edges that were in here had their crease removed, which stinks. That means that we have to like redo a bunch of that. So in the meantime, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set the mean crease of the entire thing to 1, which is going to retain maximum detail. The only things that we are going to remove the crease on are our pipes, because those we want to be nice and smooth. And then before we do the final, we're going to remove the crease on the edges of the circles. And you're going to see why here in a second. Is that crease creates this like this hexagonal, like you can actually see the faces of the polygon. By subdividing, we create this. Well, that's kind of weird. We didn't mean to do that with this guy. So let me try something here. This might be easy enough to fix, is if we just take this, and we're just going to set that mean crease back to 1. That looks a little bit better, but we'll get that all cleaned up before the final. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a couple more duplicates here. We're going to duplicate our newly transformed back, and then I'm going to create a duplicate of this STL of the SP faceplate, and then we are going to join them together, which is probably going to make the SP faceplate turn like a funny color. We'll see what color it we'll see what it does. Oh, Slayer 1, yeah, that is what we are trying to figure out, is where the shoulder buttons will go, because yeah, there's not a real clear place for it. Maybe we create little holes inside these, like the bottom black dots, where you can stick your fingers in, and either that, or, well, see, no, that what I was thinking is, like, what if I just 3D printed, instead of the shoulder buttons being the little paddles that are in there currently, what if I extended the paddle so that there's like a long peg, and then you could put it up top? But then, like, that's not going to be comfortable to be like trying to hit a shoulder button up here when you're. So we do have to solve the shoulder button crisis. I'm open to suggestions on that. So let's see here. Tab in. We're going to just grab all of this and set the mean crease to 1. And then we need to open up this backside. That sounds kind of weird when I say it that way. So we're just going to delete this face. Oh, you know what? Maybe we are going to need to create that hollow shell before we do anything. So let's do that. We're going to jump out of our edit mode here. And then let's add a plane. Mesh, plane. Now the goal here is going to be, we're going to rotate on the x-axis 90 degrees. We want to scale it down to where it almost is like exactly the same size, maybe just a little bit bigger than the Game Boy is currently. So we're going to scale on the X. We're going to put it like right in front here. And then we want to give it some geometry. So we're going to subdivide it a few times. Subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. The more subdivisions, the better. You'll see why here in just a second. So we're going to add a modifier. Like I said, this is going to be the most interesting way to do this. Wait, why is it like, I want to add a modifier? Oh, this is new for Blender 4.0. I'm actually used to using Blender 2.9. So it's kind of cool that it's got everything kind of filtered into these groups. But I need to figure out where it all go, or like where everything went. So edit, generate, probably deform. We're going to shrink wrap. That's what we want. Let's set our target as the cube. So you see what it does here is it basically suction cups onto the face of the plane that we have behind it, right? Unfortunately for us, we didn't add enough geometry. So let's delete that for now. And maybe what we'll do is, let's go with our edge select mode, and we're just going to select all the edges of our plane, the outside edges, I should say, sorry. And we're going to set the mean crease to 1. As you guys know, when I'm playing with my subdivision surface modifiers, that retains the sharp edges. So if we come in here and we go generate subdivision surface, this will give us a little bit more flexibility with how many subdivisions we actually make. So right now I'm just multiplying it times 3. And then after we've added some extra geometry, when we add modifiers like this, they apply in sequence. So we add our geometry, and then we go to deform, shrink wrap. We set our target as the Game Boy, and it's still not quite where we want it to be. I wonder if man, it's probably going to need a lot of geometry in order to properly shrink wrap on there. Man, that stinks. So again, I was hoping that this would work. We might have to go with the old-fashioned way, which is we take this. Again, I'm going to duplicate it so that we don't destroy our original. Let's hide that guy. We've got our subdivision surface modifier on there. Let's add another one, and we are going to remesh it. Now, what remeshing does is it's kind of like putting a box around your model and having a bunch of lines projected in on it to see like what the outermost shape of it is. And then once it determines what the outermost shape is, it like tries to replicate it. The problem is, as far as resolution goes, like sometimes it takes a while too. Obviously, you see, I've got my little beach ball spinning here. Depending on what the resolution size is, you end up losing a lot of detail because it ends up being like voxels and it's like really blocky. I hope we don't crash here. Come on, we've only got 13 minutes. But you see where I'm going with it, where basically what we're going to do is we're just going to replace the back plate of my model with the front plate of the Game Boy Advance SP. From there, we need to determine exactly how we're going to fit on the rear component. There goes another button. That's just the power switch. We're going to need to determine exactly how to handle this shoulder button problem. Although, ooh, okay. What if the shoulder buttons are on the bottom and we replace the cartridge gets input from the top? That would be kind of weird to play with the shoulder buttons on your pinkies though, right? I think what we might end up doing is creating a hinge on the sides. That's going to be, I think, the most ideal is if we create a hinge on the sides where there's a button on the side that becomes your shoulder button. Maybe it's even one of these black spots that's on the side of the, we turn one of those black spots into a button. And basically so the way that these work now is they're on a hinge and they hit down on the button, right? So what we need is instead to have them on a hinge where it like hooks down, right? So where you push on the side, which actually would not be that tricky to 3D print. like once we design that hinge. Oh man, this remesh is killing my computer, I see. I wonder, let's see here. Let's open up a different version of Blender and see if we can see if this will work. Hmm. Whoa. Okay, so we've got our other version of Blender open. Before I change over to it, we're going to see if I can't if I can't open it over here, then it doesn't make sense to change over, right? So dang, I really wish that I had like saved it so that oh well. Not a big deal, you guys, but let's see what we can make of it. We're going to go file. We're going to have to import the STL of that. Man, I've got a lot of Blender files in this folder. OpenSP. We're going to get the SP buttons, not the Game Boy Color buttons version. And not with the 3mm jack. Yeah, that is a good point. Ultronomus is like, I'll basically be following a tutorial, but it's going to be my tutorial. Let's see. Let's grab this one. And yeah, okay, we are back in business, sort of. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to grab this guy and we need to scale it down because I think our Game Boy SP is tiny. I think I had a problem with scaling that I did not take into account. So we're going to rotate on the Y 90. No, not the Y, on the X. We're going to bring that up to about here so that we've got it. And then we're actually going to rotate it on the Z 180 because, as you guys know, we are going to be putting it on the backside of our Temray circuit. So that done, we can grab our cube and we're going to scale this sucker down by quite a lot. Scale it down. All right. Then view, let's go to our frame selected. That's going to just reset our little zoom feature here. So with that done, now I think we can probably do this properly. So with this, now we can actually kind of, since we're going to have this hollow space here for now before we shrink it the way that we did with the finished model, we can kind of grab these things and squish them down. Tab out. Grab this, grab that, join them together. Oh no, do I have two blenders spiraling out? Oh, move over, Babe Ruth. I am now the king of Crash, the Sultan of shutdowns. Well, that's a bummer. Maybe it'll start back up after I stop streaming. I don't know. I think what I'm going to do is close this one that's crashing. Okay. So by closing the other blender, this one kind of picked up again. So what we need to do is we need to make sure we set the mean crease of this guy to 1. Now, some stuff that we don't need on this particular SP case is like we don't need this backside where the screen's going to slip in, because we're going to have like all this extra space on the inside to do that. So we're going to grab all of these faces on the backside that we no longer need. In fact, you know what we should do? Let's go ahead and do our little trick where we go mesh, cleanup. We're going to do a limited dissolve. Oh, look at these nice clean edges to work with. Actually, we should just go ahead and do that with everything. We're just going to go all mesh, cleanup, limited dissolve. And so like we don't need this particular thing here. We probably don't even need like the sides, because we're going to be using our own sides here. We're not going to need any of the bottom. We're just going to get rid of all of this. Really, all we want to keep are the slots for the hardware. And the holes on the front. And even then, it's like we only need the front plane. We don't need the beveled edges that they have here. Yeah, that's probably an easier way to select it all. Is to just select it and then deselect the stuff that we don't want to delete. Select all of this, unselect that. Select all of this. Likewise, we have to come down here and get all of these bits. Kind of make sure we don't have any of the front panel selected. And then we're just gonna delete all those faces. And so all we're left with is the front and the insides. And even this stuff, like, we can probably just get rid of this. Is just some loose stuff that I didn't quite select. So, X faces. Now again, we're going to do the mathematical way of lining this up, because I could just like, oh, you know, we're going to just grab it and drag it in and do all that, and like, it might be there, might not be. We're not going to do it that way. We are going to use this technique where we grab this edge and we're going to get the y coordinates of it. So 25, 19, 19, 17. Yeah, we can probably just copy it. And then we're going to grab all of this. And I saw some parts that were not quite connected to it. Yeah, these little guys here. So we're going to make sure to get all of that. And then with face select mode, again, I want to make sure everything's connected. With face select mode, we want to make sure that the active object is that face. And then instead of moving from the median point of the object, which is the default, we're going to use the active element, which is the front plane. So like if I change it to median, it still says, well, maybe this will work. We'll see. I've done this in the past and it's worked out fine, but so we're going to take the Y value here, we're going to paste it in, and it's not quite lined up the way that I would like it, and it looks like we missed a little button there. What was that we were missing? Let's use our Inviso select. Make sure that we got everything. Oh, see, there's still some little bits. Go X-ray again. Make sure that we grab it all. Go un-X-ray. I mean, we're doing everything the way that we're supposed to. It is the active element. We're applying it to the active element. See, and then the 3D cursor's there. Active element. I should just be able to paste the Y value of the edge of our box and it just line up. Because again, I don't want to be like off by 1/4 of a millimeter in here. Like I said, obviously we can get real close in here. And then grab on the y-axis and just line it up like real close. But even then, I'm not 100% confident in the mathematical placement of that. But of course, the idea is then we use our edge selector, we grab this edge loop, we grab this edge loop, and then we do our magic bridge edge loops tool, which is one of the loop tools in Blender. So we got to make sure that we've grabbed all the outside edges, because if we don't, then we're going to have some issues. Well, let's try moment of truth. We're going to go edge and bridge edge loops. That worked out pretty nicely, actually. And obviously, like, there's these little notches, which what is that for anyway? Oh, that's where the little LEDs are. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, that's where the power LEDs. Um, so I mean, we don't want to lose those, but also they don't have to be notched out like that, do they? But we don't want like we don't want it to like be protruding out of the back either. So I think that we're just gonna find a better way to make this work than by committing to that. And maybe the answer is that we just have like a little piece of plastic in there that shows the LEDs through on the backside. Let's see what happens when we hop out of edit mode. And once we see what this looks like not in edit mode, we can sign off for the night. But obviously we wanted to get to a place where we had some progress to show, right? Um Ultronimus says, Seven hells, I didn't realize you could zoom in that much. Is there a way to check the exact number value and compare it to what you lined up with? Yes, in fact, there is. And you know what we can do, and but I wouldn't do this, is you can select all those faces and you hit scale 0 and it flattens them, which could work in theory, but I wouldn't want to do that because it would mess with the integrity of the design that's there, and I don't want to, it needs to be able to work. Um, any minute now. Man, I am just having a real difficult time with Blender here. Man. Maybe this stream should have been one of those ones where I have like the laptop down and I do all the editing on the laptop and we just stream on this because I'm sure that what's happening is like because I've got OBS running and all that stuff, it's taking away from what Blender can do. But this is how I would do it, so I'm not sure how else to do it. I think the biggest issue that I'm having is that I have that subdivision surface modifier on, and every time I use a subdivision surface, just the amount of like calculations that it has to make as a result of. And you know what we didn't do? I should have fixed this before we started. Um, I didn't triangulate faces before I jumped out. So remember when I use that limited dissolve technique and it reduces the geometry, subdivision surface modifier does not like n-gons. It does not like faces that have more than 4 sides. So you have to triangulate faces before you exit edit mode. Otherwise, the subdivision surface modifier is like, I don't know what to do. So that is where we're going to leave it off with for tonight, at least until I can figure out how to run Blender without smashing it into a wall. Hopefully, next time I see you guys, we are going to have at least a semi-functional Game Boy. I will want to print this on an FDM printer as opposed to my resin printer because although the resin printer gets great detail, it tends to be a little bit more brittle and fragile, the finished parts. So I want to do something that's going to be a little bit tougher and reproducible. But what's cool about it is that like this could still be printed face down because the faceplate of the Game Boy, like, it I think it will still work the way that we want it to work. Um, I just need to really figure out that shoulder button mechanic, how we're gonna force those black buttons on the side to be our shoulder buttons. We shall see. Until next time, thank you guys so much for tuning in, hanging out while we're crashing Blender left and right. And that Witch from Mercury video is still coming out. It's just been a nightmare editing it because it is like hundreds and hundreds of clips that I'm going through and putting together. So that should be done hopefully by the end of the week, and you guys will have something to feast on. It's something that I've poured a lot of time and energy into, a lot of thought. If you guys liked that series that I had been doing, the Dissecting Gundam, this is along those lines of like literary analysis in our Gundam media. So, um, yeah, until next time, I will catch you guys later. Don't forget to tune into the Gundam Explained show tomorrow over on Adam's channel. And yeah, you guys take it easy. Have a good night. Stay warm. Cheers.